What's going on, gamers? So we got some leaks here from Moore's Law is dead, apparently. He's saying that the AMD Magnus APU full leak is pretty much out. This is interesting. Let's see what he has to say. So one thing we know here is that there's going to be something, apparently, according to him, right, and certain other things. But we don't see it being a direct next-gen console that is going on the market for PlayStation 5, right? Kind of more like some hybrid PC aspect with a possibility of dual boot if they're going to do that. But I would say that it's going to be more aligned to the PC aspect than anything. We're going to find out more with time, though. Let's find out what he has to say here. Here we go.
This is AMD Magnus, the APU slated to go into the next-gen Xbox, and it will be the largest APU used in a gaming console in history.
Hmm.
Seriously, as covered in a leak a few months ago, it will total roughly 408 millimeters squared. That's about 13% larger than both the Xbox Series X and the Xbox One X's die size, and it is a 46% larger die than the monolithic one that will be used in the PlayStation 6 home console. So yeah, it should be stronger than the PS6. But at the same time, it will also be more expensive because of this larger size and its
Hmm.
use of bridge dies and likely a larger RAM capacity compared to the PS6, at least if it wants to work well as a PC console hybrid. But you know what? That's okay, I think, because this time around, Xbox is going to be much more than a console. It should also be something that can run more than just Xbox apps and challenge the PC gaming market, at least somewhat directly.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I get what you're trying to say.
And although it is using a large, for a console, APU die, I will say that compared to PC mega APUs like Strix Halo, for example, it's actually a tad smaller. And therefore, yes, well, I don't see Xbox Magnus as likely being a direct competitor to the next gen PlayStation
No.
console anymore due to how much more Magnus will cost to make than like the PS6. Compared to PC gaming systems, I actually think it will be much more favorable because, yes, it will have bridge dies. That's more expensive than what the PS6 will use in a monolithic die, but it won't be that much more expensive. And yes, it will have 11 cores instead of the up to 9 cores in the PlayStation 6, but it's not insane. It's not like 12 or 16 cores like in a
Okay, that's cool. I mean, you remember what I said too. When we start getting to that point, like diminishing returns are going to hit hard. Right, so depends on what you want out of it. Like outside of the hardware. Once it's so good now, like next gen, everything's gonna look so damn good. The measure turn is gonna be so high. It's gonna be like, oh, I could do this ultra path ray tracing or path tracing, all this and that. Yeah, but outside of that, you're getting your 4K 60. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do I want outside of that? Or you decide.
a AMD Halo APU laptop. And in fact, the 11 cores that it will have a modest amount of L3 that cuts down on die size to save cost.
Yes, he's talking about the cache memories of each core because that's higher now. You get a higher speed aspect, memory aspect, because that's what this means. You got L1, L2, L3 cache of each core.
And so I guess what I'm saying is that yes, Xbox Magnus is going to be pretty expensive from the perspective of a console. I think it will definitely cost more than $800. But even though it uses 3 nanometers,
I think so too. I think it could be close to 1,000, man. And who knows with the way things are going now, it might even be more. Because if you got tax and all that stuff too, it's gonna be pretty pricey, man. I just don't see. That's why I don't see it appearing as a console, because console was always entry level. I think they're just done with it, like I said, now going for this luxury device enthusiasts, and there'll be some on their Xbox website, and maybe it's something like Best Buy, just like The Rock, but they're not gonna mass stack it all over the place anymore. I don't see them doing that anymore. I think Microsoft's taking a different approach, 100%.
I don't think it needs to cost more than $1,200. Certainly not more than $1,500
Mhm.
if Strix Halo laptops, which remember, those APUs are actually bigger than what's going to be in Magnus by a tad, those are supposedly going to cost $1,000 sooner. Those come with a screen and a battery and are this full mobile system that Xbox Magnus doesn't need to be. So I guess if you think of Xbox Magnus favorably, it's just going to depend on how you look at it. Do you
Mhm.
see it as a true console? Okay, if that's how you see it, then it's kind of just like the GPD Win 5, a vanity device for those that want the absolute best performance in a console like form factor. But what if you see it more as a gaming PC? Well, then this is going to be viewed, I believe, as a cost optimized, mass produced device that can potentially put a check on OEMs and pre builts overcharging for their gaming desktops. Like, think about it. For example, let's say that Asus wants to sell you a pre-built with an RTX 4070 in it for $2,500. How could they possibly get away with something like that if there is an Xbox console out there that runs some version of full Windows 11 and actually has like RTX 5080 or better raster and possibly around RTX 5090 ray tracing performance? Well, the answer is Asus won't be able to get away with that anymore if there's an Xbox hybrid console that costs $1,200 or heck again, even $1,500. This will spank OEMs and keep their prices and their greed in check, which is good for.
Okay, yeah, now I agree with that. That actually seems like a very plausible reality. This guy actually has vision to realize that's what I've been thinking the whole time. Like I said, I've said this long time ago. The best thing I can see about an overexpensive luxury product to a console gamer, right? Because that's not going to be console gaming entry anymore. The best thing I could see is that them trying to make a hardcore PC setup that would cost you a couple hundred more dollars to save you that. That's the best thing. But that's going to be for a niche audience, you know what I mean? Because most people that want their PCs already have their laptops and their desktops and all that, and they don't really care about that. But if you offer somebody a better deal right now, and they may be thinking about getting the upgrade down the line, I could see somebody caring about that if this follows through and all of this is true, right? Because you never know. So yeah, I mean, that's the angle that I can see being positive. But going back into the console industry, I think that's a huge mistake.
PC gamers. Now, if I sound all of a sudden excited about the future of Xbox, well, that's because, at least for right now, I am. And it's not the first time I have been, by the way. I was excited in the past about Xbox before when I thought they might do some pro gamer things, but then, in my opinion, they just ended up not doing those things. And that is what I think Magnus maybe could do once again by making their next gen console a true hybrid design. It's what I've wanted them to do for a decade now. But until Magnus, whether Xbox fanboys get it or not, Microsoft has been at war with PC gamers, doing crappy things like artificially limiting which games hit PC, putting them on a console PC gamers might not want to buy, or slapping PC games with exhaustive Xbox DRM for absolutely no reason. If Microsoft cuts the crap and stops doing that sort of stuff, and then finally embraces what would be a bright future for the Xbox brand that is a hybrid console device that runs some foolish form of Windows, then finally I believe Xbox will be doing truly pro gamer things. And seeing Microsoft actually show some apprehension to doubling down on their Xbox Game Pass price increases, that also hints to me, I must say, that they might not be giving up on the Xbox brand just yet, despite what a lot of people think, and that's for two reasons. First, the only reason Xbox would have slowed their plans to raise Game Pass prices in all regions is if they thought there were enough cancellations happening that this could kill Xbox for good before the next generation even launches. And what that means is that Xbox gamers really, really did make their voices heard. Microsoft noticed that and therefore noticed that they still have an Xbox fan base that exists and is paying attention. Not all Xbox fans are gone. If they were, there wouldn't have been mass cancellations and Xbox wouldn't have been forced to react in some degree. And so, second of all, they would only care about Xbox dying now and reacted to the mass cancellations if they really, really, really did actually want to launch a next generation still, and they didn't want to lose all momentum before that generation starts. Seriously, that is why those rumors of next gen being canceled, I think might be wrong, at least as of now. Now, look, assuming those rumors aren't just entirely fake, which I don't know all leakers out there, maybe those rumors were. I think recent rumors that have come out of next generation Xbox already being canceled are probably, if not fake, just some people getting their wires crossed with what's going on with the current gen versus the next gen. You see, I have already for months been talking about how I believe Xbox Series production has stopped. But that's because this generation has failed. That doesn't necessarily mean that Microsoft has entirely given up on launching Xbox branded consoles, right? And so I'll even go a bit further and remind you all that in a Broken Silicon that came out this week, I leaked that I had talked to people at AMD that were still working on Xbox Magnus. Now, I don't mean working on Xbox Magnus like a month ago, or they know people who talked about Xbox Magnus a month ago. I mean, these people are directly working on finalizing Xbox Magnus, and they were working on it as of last Friday.
Dude, either you were told it was a console or it is a PC. I would like to know that. There's some things I get what you're saying, but I'm not getting into all this nonsense again. You know, I mean, this is just like to me, just fantasizing and hoping for them to do something good, but I have not seen anything positive lately. So I'm not getting into all that, and I don't care because I have a PC and a PlayStation and a Switch too. I don't need an Xbox Magnus at all. At all. I don't. But if they're still doing this and they're still making it, that's cool. But I'm not sitting here thinking it's going to do something that's going to compete with PlayStation or do anything crazy or groundbreaking because it's not going to. It's just going to sell to whoever's left around. And I understand what he's saying. Not all Xbox gamers are really just being programmed and brainwashed. There are some of them that still want to stay around, but the community is smaller than it's ever been. And we see that by the way the sales tank. So there's nothing wrong with getting this if this is true. I'm not against this. I always like to see new hardware. I'm going to do my comparisons. You know how I am with that. But I strongly believe this is going to be a PC device. I do not see Microsoft trying to go on the console, like I said, console industry again, put all their stuff in Walmart, Sam's Club, and all those places, ship out millions and millions of Xboxes, and get ready to launch a next gen like they did with the Series X. I don't believe in that one bit.
So I don't believe Xbox Magnus has been canceled, at least not as of now.
Yeah.
And seeing that my sources are saying that it hasn't been canceled.
Yeah, that's, whatever. But you don't know what the hell's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months because we heard about an Xbox handle coming out and then that got canceled. You know what I mean? Though they didn't officially say that. But the thing is, it's like, there's not nothing to really like sit here and say, I'm going to put all my faith into this and hope that, and then I know it's, you know what I mean? That would be foolish. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait.
Microsoft respond to the negativity around raising Game Pass prices. That tells me they still probably want to launch another generation. But anyways, what will the full specs of Xbox Magnus look like? What will it be capable of? And, well, I'm going to go over it. The full specs for the next generation Xbox and arguably mid-range gaming PC APU that you'll be able to get in 2027. But first, an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by CD. First of all, I want to be clear about why I'm doing another Xbox Magnus leak, despite technically doing one a few months ago. And that's because that original leak, it was just a bit messy, and I apologize for that. You see, if you actually go back and watch that video, you'll see that I originally was really 50-50 on if a Magnus APU was going to end up being for a PlayStation or an Xbox. And in fact, in that video, I chose to focus on the PlayStation 6 possibilities.
True, and I was doubting some of his stuff because I'm like, I don't know how I can believe this because it's just too like all over the place. So I'm looking at this like, man, I don't know, man, because those last videos, it kind of makes me want to like doubt. And I saw some PlayStation stuff too, and I'm like, I don't know how it could be that price. So that's why I'm saying all of this. Like, I need to see what Microsoft is going to tell me. I'm tired of hearing from people saying that they heard something from Microsoft, but there's no evidence on a sheet of paper telling me that. All I hear is a bunch of talk. But where is the evidence of Microsoft saying this? I never see it. I just hear, I heard it. Where? 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 I don't see it.
Simply because, well, if I wasn't sure, just being honest, I knew the PlayStation would get more clicks. And, well, it wasn't for PlayStation, though. Within days of putting out that video, more of my sources reached out to me after doing more digging on their own. And through follow-up conversations, I was able to become 100% sure that it was an Xbox APU. That's why I relabeled the video, too, so that if you were looking through my history, you wouldn't click on a video thinking it was for a PS6 and then be confused when you hear that it's for an Xbox, so that if you click on it, at least you know what you're getting into. Even if, again, I was a bit sloppy, and I apologize for
it happens, man.
But you see, I also want to mention that, much more importantly, about a month after that original messy Xbox video, I put out what I think is probably the biggest leak out of this channel, at least this year, and that is that a Zen 2 moment is happening with AMD APUs. Really, if you've missed that video, you really should watch that, whether you're interested in PC gaming or console gaming, because it sets up some pretty important factors that are going into the Xbox Magnus, because, well, next generation, AMD's dedicated graphics cards and their APUs including Xbox Magnus, they all share chiplets. That has profound implications for economy of scale, and this is going to be a necessary factor in if Xbox Magnus and RDNA 5 dedicated graphics card can succeed next gen for the following reasons. Now, look, I can't confirm everything that is in a recent leak out of Kepler from Twitter. I don't know if the 10 million number about some deal with AMD and Microsoft wasn't met, and so that's why it fell apart. But what I can say is the gist of some recent leaks regarding the cancellation of a custom Xbox handheld APU, the gist of it is correct to my knowledge. I do happen to know on my own, through my own sources, that there was a semi-custom APU that was going to be used in the Xbox handheld, and that actually it would use ARM cores, but that it just wasn't worth it to Microsoft to do so. Now, I didn't get an exact number or many follow-up details as to why, but you can infer that they just were worried it wouldn't sell enough to be worth it.
They made the right move.
And so I can back up at least most of what Kepler said there.
Hmm.
Well, so think about it. If Microsoft, or if AMD was annoyed at Microsoft, like canceling series production, not ordering enough APUs for them to think it's worth it to make a semi-custom part, well, that means that it is very important that Xbox Magnus shares parts with desktop RDNA 5, because this allows Microsoft to avoid the issue they're running into now with the series consoles, where they've basically been forced to cut production, and because they've been forced to cut production, it's raising prices. Not the case with Magnus. With Magnus, as long as it doesn't sell absolutely abysmally, because it shares most of its silicon with PC gaming parts, it can be justified to keep making it new, and that should help its longevity, even if it remains a fraction of the sales of the next-gen PlayStation.
Yeah, it's going to be significantly lower, but like I said, it's for hardcore enthusiasts. And what's going to happen is I think they're not going to just have this model. This is the power model. I think they are going to have other models, like other PC hybrid models. I think so. But this is going to be the kind of like the main attraction for power, I guess. Except for hardcore enthusiasts and people who want to pay that much for that. The average person is not going to be able to pay that much for that. You know what I mean? So that's why I say when we think about entry level, it's going to have to be something else. It's not going to be this. And Microsoft's not going for that anyways because they've just realized, like, let's just make profit or whatever. You know what I mean? And make this, but they're not going to overship and overleave stuff sitting around anymore. They're not doing that anymore. They're going to do a different approach, I'm telling you.
That's very important, right? That's important for a potential Xbox purchaser to know that even if it doesn't sell a ton, Microsoft can more easily afford to support it and keep manufacturing it long term. But you see, it's not just good for Xbox there. That also makes it very good for AMD, because now, even if it's just 5, 10, 15, 20 million additional dies, that does allow AMD to spread apart the cost of their mid-range die. It will now be shared with the console, and so that means it's cheaper per die to make, but then also this kind of makes developers give you almost console level optimizations to PC dedicated AMD graphics cards next generation. And so this whole situation,
Yeah, that could be cool. Just like Sony's, have the situation going AMD to push things to another level. Everybody's going to be using that. So that's not necessarily bad to see it somewhere because you're not interested in PlayStation. No, what you need to see is they're advancing FSR4 in general and helping. And PC has FSR4. You know what I mean? Xbox is going to use FSR4. PlayStation is helping all that. They're co-developing. So I don't see how that's not benefiting the whole industry. You see, it is.
of
And
sharing
getting up in NVIDIA's face, getting them to bring down the prices. It's not bad. It's good.
chiplets between Xbox and dedicated AMD products next gen, this is just a win-win where it will make things cheaper for both Microsoft and AMD, get better support for both Xbox and Radeon graphics cards. And yeah, again, check out that video if you want to see more about the economics and behind it and the other Magnus-like products coming out that aren't an Xbox next year. But I've wasted enough time. Let me finally get into the Xbox Magnus specs. All right. AMD Magnus, the APU, in the next generation Xbox console. So it will be composed of two chiplets. One of them is a 144mm squared SoC die that will be made on TSMC N3P. And I actually have seen N3P specifically mentioned in documentation by now. So I do believe that's the node it is using. And it's an SoC die in that it has the CPU cores, the video out, and the AI engine. Now, in addition to that, of course, it is connected to a 264mm squared GPU die. This is the die that will be shared with desktop Radeon products, and that will be on either N3C or N3P. I still haven't heard firmly which one they're going to go with for the desktop Radeon APU chiplets. And in total, comes to 408mm squared. Now, as for TDP,
Dude, there's no way this is not going to be $1,000+ Guys, don't fantasize anything else. This is going to be close to 1,000 or more or something. I promise you. Yeah, no way, man. Y'all, you guys gonna get priced out. Hopefully they have a cheaper model for you guys. And unless you're just like, I don't care, I got bank, you know what I mean? Oh, okay. But I'm just talking to like the common whole, you know what I mean? This is not going to be cheap. If this is true, because we don't know that, you know what I mean? This is not official specs, but he says leak. So we're going to hold him accountable for this, guys. Remember, when this actually drops, if it does, we need to compare what he said when it comes out, because this is going to tell us a lot. But I'll tell you right now, I know he says estimate, not 100%. I get it. I don't know. I feel like if you got a leak, either it's 100% or not. You know, either you're giving me the specs or you just pretending. You know what I mean? Not saying that he did, but I'm just saying I feel like if somebody gave me a leak, not me guessing, then you really leaked it to me and I gave you the right information, because it's a leak. It's not a rumor. A leak means I actually got the correct information and I'm giving you the leak. You know what I mean? It's a leak, not guessing or I don't know. No. It's a leak, bro. Either it is or it isn't.
I believe, and it is just a belief, that they will target around 250 to 350 watts. So you're still
Yeah.
looking at something that's like, I don't know, 20 to like 60, 70% more power consumption than actually the PS6. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot more power than the PS6, but I still believe they will try to get this within form factors that can be considered traditional consoles. So
Yeah.
using more energy than a PS4 or a PS6 for sure, but probably not using radically more energy than like a launch PS3 at peak power usage or something. They're going to want this to be cost effective and not chug too much energy. That is my belief, though. I don't know that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Next, it will have 68 RDNA 5 compute units disabled down from a maximum of 70. I've seen speculation out there. Technically, I've already confirmed 70 CUs, but I'm going to do it again.
Damn, man. That's kind of like getting close to the ballpark of a RTX 5080. You know how much that thing is? Even if you wanted to go for a 5070 Super, you know what I mean? How can this be anything? You know what I mean? Dude, I, yeah, man. I don't know about that, guys. Once again, AGM's just showing you something. Like, you see the price of that? So in a few years, could it possibly go down? Definitely if AMD gets in their face, sure. Because it's still 2 years out or whatever. But I don't see how that car is going to even be $1,000 in the future, somewhere around there. You see, this is one card. We're not even talking about CPU. We're not talking about the motherboard. We're not talking about the RAM. We're not talking about the case, the liquid cooling, all that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And the controller that comes with it and all of that. How is this not going to be 1,000+? You know what I mean? So, if as a console gamer, I want you to think about that 2 years from now. Do you want to spend $1,000-something on something? You guys, let me know what you think about that. There's nothing wrong if you want to do that. It's your money, your free will of choice. But I'm saying, if this is your way of entering into next gen, you're being priced out massively if they don't have cheaper aspects, and that's not for the common hall.
In here. 70, 100% sure, multiple sources, people speculating that it's 72 or something. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It's 70 compute units, right? And then they disable two of those. Now, that is comprised, and this is really interesting about RDNA 5, of 4 shader engines. Most console gamers, you can ignore this section, but for the technical PC enthusiast dorks out there, a lot of you, I think, will find this fascinating. I have had this verified by
Dude,
multiple sources.
what? How?
4 shader engines. 3 of the shader engines, like 3 of the quadrants of the design, have 9 work groups. That means 18 compute units. And then there's another lopsided shader engine with just 8 work groups or 16 compute units. And each of these shader engines has 2 shader arrays. Now, I can't tell you much more than that, but it does seem like there's something going on here with however they've designed RDNA 5. And I believe they've already
Yeah, not even that, but we're also jumping to 48 gigabytes of GDDR7 bus memory. And then that, oh man, I don't know, y'all. Like, no, this thing is savage, but yeah, it's gonna be pricey.
talked about
If
that they
this is
can
true,
do this with previous RDNA generations as well, but like they can have lopsided shader engines. You don't have to have everything symmetrical, and it won't be with Xbox Magnus. Now, the GPU will have at least 24 megabytes of L2 cache. I'm just basing that on what I've seen from desktop Radeon graphics cards that will share this chiplet. I don't know the maximum amount of L2, but it will have 24. By the way, for those keeping track, 24 megabytes, that is almost 5 times the L2 that was in the Xbox Series X. And so while it does not have infinity cache, it has wildly more L2 cache and much faster RAM. And so I do not think this thing will be bandwidth constrained at all. It has effectively just a boatload more bandwidth than the current generation of consoles. Now, one thing that they didn't go insane with, although I do think will be more than enough for PC gaming, is they have 3 Zen 6 cores. Now, remember, these are 3 nanometer N3P cores. These won't be clocked as fast as the N2X desktop, cores that will be found in like $800 gaming processors, but they're still going to be pretty fast. They get 3 of those. They will be faster than the ones in the PlayStation 6 Orion or the handheld. And then it will also have 8 Zen 6C cores with 12 megabytes of L3. Now, I say up to, by the way, because I don't know if one of the Zen 6 nor one of the Zen 6C cores, or maybe one of each, are disabled. I do
fair.
think there's a chance that it will be in total a 9-core CPU that's just faster than the 9 cores in the PS6, but technically it could be up to 11. I don't know if they disable any of the CPU cores, although I did know that they disable part of the GPU. And then the memory controller, 192-bit memory bus with up to 48 gigabytes of
That's a
GDDR7.
lot.
For those keeping track, that means that I believe they could go with probably 24 or like 36 or 48 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, that could be max on like 48 gigs. 32 seems more possible, but could you possibly add more since it's going to be a hybrid? You never know. There may be upgradable aspects to this. It's possible.
Right? Yeah, I believe that's how that would work, right? Because yeah, 24, 36, or 48. I would hope they go with
Mhm.
48 gigabytes of RAM because if this is meant to run
That
PC
would be
games,
crazy.
you're gonna want to, have something like, I don't know, like what would that be, like 16 plus 32 for like 16 gigabytes of VRAM, 32 gigabytes of system. So that's what I hope they go with. But technically, I don't know the final RAM amount they will select, and they probably don't quite yet either. Now, this is interesting, and this might be unique compared to the PlayStations. This has an NPU, or AI engine, whatever you want to call it, with up to 110 tops when it's operating at 6 watts, but then it also has a low power NPU mode for 46 tops to still meet Microsoft Copilot requirements that uses much less energy at 1.2 watts.
Okay, so yeah, with the neural processing unit, I mean, that's definitely going to help a lot with AI upscaling, and they're pushing AI heavy, and that's definitely going to help with power consumption modes too to take the stress off of that. So I can see that being very good, for their AI. It's definitely going to be having better backwards compatibility. All that type of stuff is going to be in that. If they have the NPU working like this, it's going to be able to help massively with AI upscaling and take the weight off of other processors so they could be freed up for that. That's why you like NPUs because they are good for that.
I'm not sure why they are worried about 2 power consumption modes, but I assume it has something to do with budgeting more energy for the NPU versus the CPU at times. And I don't know what they will do with this. And technically, if you think about the PlayStation 6 consoles, I still don't know 100% if they do or don't have an NPU. Although
They're going to. There's no way if you're pushing ray tracing and stuff like that. I promise you they're going to have an NPU in there. There's no way that they would not do that. Because they're already telling you they have radiance cores. They're trying to do the ray tracing cores like NVIDIA has. They're doing all of that, because they had their tensor cores and all that. So they're doing all of that, and that's going to be in there. And this is good, though, because like I said, I'm not against AMD ever getting better because what that means is that NVIDIA has to drop their prices and they have more competition, and they need to somehow get to them because they've been dominating for so long. There's no competition, man.
I've been talking with developers, and a lot of them think that it would make sense for the PlayStation 6 consoles to just, much like the PS5 Pro, have a ton of TOPS built into the GPU that it can run off of that and that it doesn't need an NPU. I don't know. We'll find out. But what I do know is Microsoft has a fairly powerful, likely XDNA 3 NPU in Magnus, and so they will probably want to use that for running some operations in parallel to the GPU running the pixels. And then finally, it is targeting a 2027 launch. And
That's what I've always thought. Remember I said not 2026, 2027? And then there's people saying 2026. I'm like, I mean, they possibly could because they're Xing out with the series and stuff a bit. So maybe, but I don't know, man. I'm thinking 2027 and PlayStation 6, 2028 or whatever. And Microsoft may try to get ahead because they're going into the PC market, and it doesn't really matter because they're not doing that route anymore. So they don't necessarily have to follow anything and launch next to Sony anymore because they've moved on from that. And so there we have it, guys. A long 30-minute video here. I'm not coming here to slam anything. We're just talking about things. Honestly, like I said, I'm not being negative on something that doesn't necessarily have to be negative about just to do it. No, that's because that's how I felt for those situations. There was 7 straight days, a week straight of anti-consumer behavior from Microsoft. It's crazy. So, yeah, they got the smoke. So that's what happens. And, you know, other people, like I said, I'm going to ignore them. I can't take you serious. Learn to honor your deal and not be a loser. Later, y'all. Grow up.